All right. Well, we are going to go ahead now and bring in our guest for today, and that is the owner of the Maximum Fighting Championship, the one and only Mark Pavelich here on Bloody Elbow Radio. Mark, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, fellas. What's shaking, man?
Not too much, and of course, coming off a big MFC 29 just a few weeks ago, and Mark, you're back in the news this week with your piece at MFC.TV writing about celebrity referees. What led you to write this piece?
Well, you know what the thing is that I have a great deal of respect for all the officials in MMA. I've never been that guy that went, that's a bad call, or that's, I've never, like other promoters in the world that go on video blogs and start, bashing guys and things like that. That's not, I don't do that, right? But what I do notice is I see this ongoing progression of officials making their own fees with commissions, right? And that's what I kind of have an issue with. It's not so much the officials. Listen, my father was a referee in the NHL, official in the NHL for 30 years. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, right? That's how we ate. Our family grew up that way. My father, that's what he did for a living, right? So I've never been one to ever criticize, okay, that wasn't, the right call or whatever. But what I have noticed is that there's officials out there, and I'm not even saying that maybe it's not even their fault. It should be more that the commissions regulate the fact what they should be getting paid, right? And I think the piece that we wrote basically got kind of twisted around. But like I said, I've always thought that there should be a tiering system when you got guys like Big John McCarthy and Herb Dean, who are the better referees in the world, and the Yves Levines and those kind of guys, and they should be paid a certain amount of money, and then you go from there.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, do you think that having these as you call them celebrity referees on your show, and not just your show, the MFC, but just the show in general, can help bring legitimacy to a show in the eyes of an average fan, and that maybe is why they can demand those bigger numbers?
I don't know. I've never put an official on one of my promo pieces or advertised one in the 11 years being in business. Mm-hmm. But I guess for smaller organizations that might be a selling point for them. So I'm not here to criticize. Like, I think it's ridiculous to put an official on a poster or use them in your advertising. You'd never see that in any other sport in the world.
Yeah, and so I mean, is that obviously something you want to focus on the fighters, and is that kind of why this is bugging you?
Yeah. Yes. I want to focus on the fighters to the fact that, like I said, I have to make that extremely clear. I have the utmost respect for officials in the mixed martial art world. I really do, and the commissions as well. I've never really had very big conflicts with officials or with commissions. I just think that when I was noticing that, when an official can make his own price tag and tell that to the commission of that's his fee, I think there's a problem with that, And like I said, if the referees are doing, seminars on the side or whatever the case may be, then they can charge whatever they want. But for the actual event, it should come down to the commissions, and the commissions should have a tiering system of the better officials in the world down to the not so good officials,
Yeah. Now, Mark, it seems like this is kind of what led you to write this was it had to have been a tipping point, because to me it would seem that writing something like this isn't just something that you do on a whim. It's kind of been something has it been something that's been building inside of you for a long time, and what was the tipping point that made you write this?
Well, you know what the funny part is that, see, it's different if I was some Johnny-come-lately dude that came in this sport. I've been in the game 11 years, which puts me probably, in the top, 2 or 3 shows on the planet, right, for being in business the longest I have. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that, contrary to people that want to write on video blogs and MMA websites, one thing they don't understand is I'm for the preservation of the sport of mixed martial arts prior to even the Maximum Fighting Championship. So for me, I've always seen, even I've regulated myself. There was a time when I first started in this business where I was managing fighters, I owned the show. No one ever criticized me for doing that. I criticized myself and stopped managing fighters because in the early days of MMA, because I thought, that's not right. If I own the show and I manage them, I self-regulate myself. You know what I mean? So when I make those kind of comments on things like officials and things like that. I'm not doing it for actual publicity. I'm doing it to make the sport better, right? And I've always had an issue with if a casino pays an official or a promoter pays an official. They should never pay an official. It should always come through the commission.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think it at any type of level, do you think it's a conflict of interest for promotions to bring in their own referees?
100% it is. That's not the promotions doing to bring in officials. They should never do that. That should always be done through the commission.
So you've never brought in an official for any of your shows?
I've never brought in an official per se to say, okay, I brought in that official and then I had to pay him. The commission brought him in and then I had to pay him. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
Now, have you ever?
I paid the commission to pay the official.
Yeah. Now, have you ever gone to a commission and recommended a referee that you've wanted on one of your shows?
No, that's if the commission kind of sediments. I think there's some great officials out there. I really do. I don't think there's that many bad ones out that are on TV. I look at guys like I think the best official in the world is Big John McCarthy. I think I don't care what anybody else says. I think he's the best official in the world. I think Herb Dean, Yves Levine, Josh Rosenthal. Those kind of guys, and there's new guys like Jaron Vallel in Canada and those kind of ref officials that you can see that they're not guys that are, they're just in it for a quick kind of thing. They're in it for a long term. And like I said, I have a great deal of respect for them because as I told you earlier, my father was a referee in the NHL for 30 years and in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Him and I spoke about that on a constant basis. He said to me that he thinks that MMA officiating is the hardest officiating in the world, harder than NFL football, harder than NBA basketball, because the level of how fast the sport comes out.
Yeah. Now, because of how you feel about this, would you ever run in a place with no commission, or is that just out of the question?
Well, it's out of the question, right? I'm the largest mixed martial art organization in Canada, and most people believe probably in the top 3 in North America now, right? So I really can't afford to do things like that. And like I said, as more jurisdictions open up, like Ontario, for example, that gives us a lot of places to do events. And like I said, my last event, along with SL Feldman's and Caesars Windsor, was fantastic. And like I said, the commission there was first class. The way they conducted things, and it was real professionally done. Ken Hayashi and the guys over there, they just ran a first-class organization.
Yeah. So how do you feel then about when the UFC runs their overseas shows and they're running in England and they're basically doing it themselves and they're their own commission and you have Mark Ratner running things? How do you feel about that?
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that you brought something like that up, right? Because if I bring that up, right, I become this hater and this crazy man that everybody tries to think. But there's no commission in England, right? There's none, right? So I'm always been kind of curious on how they've always got away with that, right? But sometimes when you're the 5,000-pound gorilla, people look the other way, right? But I tell you right now, any other shows go inside there, they're gonna say, hey man, that's not right. And I've always known that, right? So, and I like Mark Ratner, and he knows the sport very well, and he knows as well as anybody that he probably, there's a gray line that they're treading there.
Yeah. Now, did you read Big John McCarthy's response to what you wrote?
No, I verbally spoke to Big John, right?
Okay.
So on the telephone because. Very good, right? Because Big John's a straight shooter, I'm a straight shooter. At the same time as, my writer, the article is my article. My writer writes it, So there's some things that he probably added in there that probably, shouldn't have did that. When someone's iconic like Big John McCarthy, there's a certain line you shouldn't cross, in my opinion. And on occasion, we make some mistakes and cross those lines. But, I don't think Big John should be centered out in the article. I think when the term was and I've never used that term in my whole entire life, celebrity referee. My writer used that term, but they are now. They're don't be mistaken. Guys like Big John and Herb and Yves and all those guys, people recognize them, man, because in our sport, that's kind of how it is.
Okay, so to you, Mark Pavelich, as the owner of the MFC. Do you think it is any advantage when you have international TV to have referees that people recognize on your show? Do you think that's an advantage?
I think because of the level of they are at now, right? Because I think there is a significant difference between that group of guys that I've named on a few occasions and the rest of officials out there. I think there is a big difference in the level of my show with the level of athletes that I have in my organization. I think it's very important to have those type of officials at my event because the speed is much different than smaller shows.
Now, we had Douglas Lima on a couple days after his win, and he said that his contract with you, had expired. He had a 3-fight deal, and he's renegotiating. How are contract negotiations going with Douglas Lima right now? Of course, you're welterweight champion.
I mean, I very rarely that ever happens where I have a contract open like that. His manager found a way not to renew the contract prior to the fight at the same time as we are trying to re-sign our champion. And I don't really see, where else he could go fight with the exposure that we give him and the level of our organization. Like I said, it's not a mistake on my behalf. It's, I really did try to re-sign him prior to the fight, and his manager found a way to kind of avoid that until the actual fight. And I guarantee you that in the 12 years I've been doing business, that will never happen again.
Interesting. So do you kind of tip your cap to his manager for figuring out how to do that?
Yeah, it's sneaky, but in our business, I shouldn't even use the word sneaky. I mean, I knew Douglas. Did you know who Douglas Lima was 3 fights ago?
I very, very faintly.
Faintly. Now you know who he is, right? Because Maximum Fighting Championship has always had the potential to do that, right? With being on HDNet and being, the level of the organization we're at, all of a sudden 3 fights later, everybody knows who this guy is. If they want to forget, if his side wants to forget that, then, I can show you a long list of guys that call us back and go, hey, can we get back? You know what I mean? And like I tell everybody, God forgives, the Pavelich family doesn't. So that's how I've always felt that way. We're a very fair family. We respect all the athletes in our organization. But at the same time, if you actually think outside, listen, there's only 1 or 2 organizations in the world right now that I actually think that you could sign with that are better than ours, and they're both owned by the same people. Right? Outside of that, for most fighters, pay-wise, sponsorship-wise, live TV on HDNet, I don't know, man. I just don't see outside of their organization that you could fight in a better one.
Mm-hmm. So do you expect to have negotiations wrapped up with him? And I mean, when do you think we can expect to see Douglas Lima back?
Oh, listen. I love watching him fight all the time. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I've always been like that. There's guys I love watching to fight. I love watching Pete Spratt fight. I just don't like to watch him fight against some black belt in jiu-jitsu. I like to watch someone that's going to stand and bang with them, and they're going to smack each other around, and everybody's going to love it. I love watching Douglas Lima fight because he tells people, "Don't take me on the ground because I'll submit you. Let's stand." And then he stands and bangs with people like Terry Martin and knocks them out. So I mean that's what my organization's all about. That's why I signed guys like Marcus Davis, because I knew that once I put him in my organization, he's going to give me a great fight every time, and that's exactly what he did at MFC 29.
Yeah. So, Mark, can you spill any beans for us? What's in store for MFC 30? Is there anything you can tell us? Location-wise, fight-wise?
Yeah, it's going to be in Edmonton. It's either going to be June 10th. I think it's June 10th. It's going to be confirmed today or 17th, but probably the 10th. And I'm going to have Marcus Davis fighting Richie Whitson. I'm going to have Hermes Franca fighting Drew Fickett. That's going to be an awesome fight. I got Thomas Denny, Sheldon Westcott, a lot of great fighters on the show, and I'm really excited about MFC 30 Unplugged, up close and personal, it's called.
Now, Mark, I have to ask you, are you going to be going to that other show next week in Toronto?
Absolutely not. Not a chance.
Not a chance? Are you curious to see what happens?
I know what's going to happen. I know that people are going to complain that they couldn't see the show because they were too far away, right? MMA's never been made to be in a venue that size. I mean, it's like saying to people, "Oh, I went to Woodstock one time." Then the next time you sat home and watched on television. You know what I mean? Because no one wants to be in a room that far away from the action, right? And that's why the MFC's always been like, say, for example, a place like Caesars Windsor. I mean, 5,000 people, escalated seating, in the Coliseum, just perfect seating. That's the way MMA is meant to be seen, And I've always been a big advocate of that. I mean, I wish them the best of luck. They are, they're the superpower of MMA, but at the same time, as I wouldn't be caught dead in that joint.
All right, Mark. Well, we really want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and good luck going forward with the MFC. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. You take care, man.